Alrighty folks, want to welcome you back to another video from Yates Computers Tips and Reviews. This one is configuring a router. When you get a new router or a refurbished router, you can reset it by pushing the button on the back or on the bottom. Press the reset for about 10 seconds, it'll reboot, it'll clear out everything. Once you do that, once it's plugged in to your computer that you have, you plug it in to the network ports, not the internet port, but the actual network kind of router ports. There should be more than one, or an output port is usually your input, that's your internet, and then there's like an output that goes to a router, switches, whatever you need to configure. However, it goes out to your network from that point. From that point, once you have it hooked up, you hit the Windows and the S. You can go to search for command prompt or run command prompt. Go IP config. The first one I tried to do, the router had some issues with, so I had to change routers. This one was reset. The other router came in at 192.168.1.1. This is the same manufacturer, but this model comes in at 192.168.0.1. So this is an important factor I wanted to bring up, because no matter if you think it should be 1.1, 2.1, or even 3.1, some manufacturers use all of those. Some different manufacturers use different IP addresses by default. So going in here, finding that IP address that you have and what the default gateway becomes important. That's why I did the IP video, to go through some of those settings. So basically, then you open up your browser, you type in that IP address, it should instantly come up with the login. From there, you just simply log in. You have to find the default admin password, and voila, you're in. It'll ask you if you want to save your password and all that type of stuff. You don't have to do any of that. Go up and clear that out of there. No, I don't want you to save that password. From here, you can change the router name. This is actually the IP that your router is actually taking. So where I talked about that .0, .1, .3, this is where you can change that. That's where it comes in an important factor, such as you have a firewall. Depending on where you want to implement that firewall, you can actually put that firewall between your internet and this router to protect anything on there. But let's say you have a network that you don't want firewalled. Your security cameras, those type of things that you want to go out to the internet because you're using your phone, other devices to monitor those, where you don't want them to be blocked. You don't have to worry about it because it's your cameras. You can do that on a separate port and not firewalled, or you can do that off of your firewall, off of those ports. There are settings in there you can configure. A lot of routers, some routers actually have firewall settings in them. I will probably see some in here that I will mention. But then you have your DHCP. This is something, when you get into bigger businesses, this kind of comes important. Is where do you start your DHCP at? This is one of the big factors. Is this one by default starts at 100. That means from not 1, but basically from 2 to 100 are your fixed IP ranges. I don't know too many places that really need that many fixed IPs. How many printers and other things are you really going to need fixed IPs for? So, I mean, you can easily lower this down. This is something that's flexible. You can change too. So you say 50. Okay, so how many leases do you need? Now you can go up to 249. So, in that range. Don't really recommend it. I recommend about 240. Because there's some things that want to use that higher range, like Wi-Fi repeaters and certain things that really fight with you and really want to use those higher numbers. So I don't recommend using those top 10. I recommend you leave them open. But you can easily say, okay, give me 100, give me 150. Now that actually would cover pretty large of a business. 150 computers with about 48 fixed IPs, so 48 printers that are network printers. Well, hopefully you don't have 150 network printers, because then that's pretty much silly. You might as well hook them directly to the computer, because the point of doing a network printer is to share the printer. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring up. Here you can put in static information if you need it. Here you can actually set the time zone. But then you get into other more details. If some of these. Here is actually where you can put in cloud MAC address type stuff. You can enable. Actually, let's see, advanced routing. If you need any of these kind of features. This one actually has wireless integrated. That should have been cleared. So you can actually go in and change. Here you can specifically choose what channel you want. Let's see, wireless security, your security key to actually connect to this device. What security protocol you want. What your key is. Web MAC address. Other little key things in here. Usually there's a bandwidth that you can choose. Here it is. Get into security. This is actually firewall. It'll actually block a couple little things if it gets to this. Some of them are more complex. Some actually have full firewall features in there where you can actually block ports and block a lot of other things. You got VPNs. This is becoming more and more important nowadays, is what you allow to pass through, what you don't. If you only allow, let's say, the PPTP pass through, it's the only VPNs you allow. You can actually disable those to block them so they don't pass through. There's more little features in here that you can set up. And this is not an expensive router, not an expensive device. Different settings you can do. You get to admin. This is where you change your admin password. This is how you allow it to actually be logged into. This is remote. So this would be actually from the internet side, I believe, in. A lot of it, you have all your descriptions of what it all is. These are the key factors that I wanted to point out. All these little things that are in here. Logging, you can enable logging. Diagnostics, you can ping from here. You have your firmware updates. Factory defaults if you want to reset it. And of course you have your status. It tells you all about when the firmware was, so you know to look it up. You know all your settings, what the default gateway, all of these type of things. When you hook up to internet, it'll pull a lot of this stuff. All your locals, tells you the MAC address of the unit, tells you what IP address. Here's your subnet, what it is, what ranges you have set up. This is what I mentioned about when you configure multiple routers off of this router. When you pull this, this will let you monitor who's connected. Even if you have 3 routers connected off of this, but this one hands out all the IP addresses, this one will let you know who's connected. You can actually, a lot of them, you can actually block people, you can kick them off, you can do a lot of things through this feature by knowing this, because this actually logs their MAC address, their IP address, all these type of things. So those are handy for security. Wireless, what the wireless channel is, what your SSID is, those you can change also. So those are important. Now you can have another router attached to this one, but what you would want to do is when you go into setup, you disable DHCP so that it does not give out IP addresses. You can officially attach another one to this and let it do DHCP. Depending on how many users you have, you may have to do that. If you got 100 users in research and you got 100 users in accounting, or 200 in accounting and 100 in research and 50 in the office, you're looking at 350 users. When you only have 200 IPs available, you can't do that. So you may need to do something of this sort. It's really going to be an overload on the units because of how much traffic, but newer units, they can go pretty fast. The new Wi-Fi 6, the new AC, AX units, they can handle a lot of traffic. But this is really the hurdle that I've seen a lot of people get stuck on. Because as long as you change this number here, you go to 1, 2, 3, so that this IP address is different, you're okay. Because you don't want your secondary unit to have the same local IP address. You're going to end up with problems. Other thing you can do is you can actually put them all on the same network. I've done that where you do this, but you change this number. You give it a different fixed IP address. Because this setting right now has 100 or 99, 98 available, because you have one used and you can't use 100, so you have 99 available. You can change that to 2. You can add another router, put it to 3. That's the other way you can do it. So that these, if you turn off DHCP, give it a fixed IP, that all the traffic comes in to that router, and you can actually change the Wi-Fi name if you're over in accounting to say accounting or something similar, you know, whatever you want. You can ACC, you know, you can name it anything you want. I know accounting I typoed, but you know, you can name it anything you want. Some of them allow guest networks. Some of them actually allow multiple SSID names. So you can actually set one up for accounting, you can set one up for management. They can actually, most of them have 2 separate passwords. But where it's handy is if you turn off DHCP and you go into status and you go into the DHCPs, where are they? You can actually see who's connected. And if you have the names, if you know what the names are, you know who they are. So you know who's connected. So that's one of the factors you have. So depending on security settings and a lot of other things, this is really a quick, easy way to do it. But I really wanted to show you inside the router configurations, because I also want to do one on firewalls. The firewall is really more complex. There's a lot more settings you can do. But I wanted to go through this because probably not a whole lot of people go through and do this. Because this name you'll probably hardly ever see. Most of the time you're going to be looking at the SSID when you connect to a wireless network. Maybe you put in a network and it's working fine, but you have a Netgear and you buy another Netgear and now you have 2 Netgears and you don't know what Netgear is which. People are getting confused trying to connect to one that's not theirs. They're trying to connect to the other one, because some Netgears will actually give you like a model number. See, this is actually the model of the device I'm connected to, but some will just say Linksys, some will just say Netgear, some will just say whatever the brand name is. So it gets into a little bit more of a complicated situation where you might have to go in and just do a simple little tweak or a change, and you got to find all this information. This is something I don't see again that anybody talks about. They tell you just do this, go in, set your security key, make sure you change your password. Want to change that again? Suggest that again. Change your admin password. Do not ever leave it to default. Could be as simple as just your business name, anything, but you don't want to leave it admin, because everybody in the world knows, oh, pretty much Linksys, the default password's admin, so they get right in. So you don't want to do that. You want to put some kind of tighter security. Home users especially, most people take it right out of the box. They set it up. I've seen it where they get a cable modem and they get wireless through their internet provider. They plug it in and they basically go from there. They don't change any admin passwords. They don't do any security changes. They don't do anything. So this is really one of the little flaws that a lot of people do, because it's working. As long as it works, they have their default login and their default username, they think they're good. So this is one of those subjects that really don't get talked about a lot. And again, it's not that hard. You log in, there it is. Here's where you can change your password. Some units, like this one, prompted you for a username and password. Some units will actually let you put a username and a password. Some won't. Even though this asks you for the name, it's not really a feature that's available for this one. But that's something I wanted to bring up, because you will see, depending on what model you log into, there could be a lot of differences, not only between the model, but right up here on the top is the firmware. That's actually the software that this unit is running. There could be a lot of differences between version 5, version 6, version 8, .1, .5, whatever. There can be a lot of variables here. Maybe they came out with something special one year for a certain version because they thought it would work out good, and then the next year they took those little features away. So you might actually end up having that problem where you run into that issue where you think you have everything set up and you don't, because all of a sudden that firmware is different. You run across a different setting. Give me one moment here to fix this issue. So it goes back to what I was saying about little simple things. Could be any little thing. But if you don't know how to get in there and change the little simplest things, like these, used to be in the old days, if you had a cable modem and other things like that, you had to go in here and set up, I believe it was PPOPE, and you had to give it the username and password to connect to that device that goes out to the internet. Usually it was like an internet username and password. Nowadays, I don't think anybody really uses that, but you might run across that. Maybe you have to use a fixed IP on this device. Sometimes there's some little configurations between different places in the country. So I wanted to touch base on this to show everybody, to show them actually what is actually in there. It's not a lot in a basic economy style is what I would call it. A lot of them, this one, I don't see the option, will give you auto channel. There's mix mode. If you want to go, this one's a G router. If you want to go G only, B, mixed. So that way is another security feature for you. Let's say you have this hooked up to some place that you only have B. You have older Wi-Fi for some weird reason, for some department that you don't really use Wi-Fi a lot for. Maybe it's printers, maybe it's something unusual where you don't want a lot of people on the internet. You can disable G so other people can't connect. So there's security features in here that you want to browse through and look at. I think I'll wrap this one up. I want to thank everybody for watching. Make sure you hit the subscribe, hit the bell, and watch out for other feature videos coming out. Thank you.